Today we're going to do a guide showing you how to solve various problems relating to the frame of the Bugaboo Cameleon. So here I have a Bugaboo Cameleon 2, and the frame is also Cameleon 2 frame, but the frame has stayed more or less the same with the Cameleon 3, and it was more or less the same with Cameleon 1 as well. So with the Cameleon 3, some of the like style, design type things have changed, and some of the types of plastic they use inside. But the way it all fits together and the way it functions is more or less the same. On the Cameleon 2 and the Cameleon 1, one difference with the frame that you don't have on the Cameleon 3 is that with the frame off, the chassis is loose. And the frame itself actually locks the chassis tight. That means it locks the front frame and the back frame so that they stay apart at an angle. On the Cameleon 3, the chassis locks itself and the frame just fits on top. So the first problem we're going to deal with is what to do when the frame will not connect easily to the chassis. And there can be a couple of causes for this. If you have a Cameleon 2 or a Cameleon 1, then a very common cause for this is actually not located in the frame itself, but on the chassis. So if you look at these little struts that stick up, that the frame locks onto, it has a button at the front that depresses. When that depresses, it locks the chassis, the front and back parts of the frame. And what's happening is that between the two discs dealing with the front frame and the back frame, there's like a whole series of pegs. And when you press this down, it pushes those pegs in and locks them into the other disc. So if there is any sort of blockage in this mechanism, this button will then not depress and the frame will not be possible to lock onto the chassis. The easiest way to fix this is simply to use WD-40 or some sort of generic spray that can seep down inside and spray it here, as well as between the second and third discs. If you're opening it up, then you can use silicone, but otherwise you're going to need something that will seep its way down inside, some sort of a spray grease. And then you just want to work the button until it moves smoothly. Now if this doesn't work, you would actually have to take apart the chassis and realign whatever the problem is. Sometimes when you have any of the metal, larger metal elements of the chassis, if they bend, then the discs don't align properly and those struts aren't fitting into the hole. But that's sort of a separate and more complex fix. In general then, first problem with the frame, when it doesn't lock into place, and the first cause and solution to that problem is to oil up those elements of the chassis. Okay, so the second cause for that problem can be in here, which is the mechanism that locks and unlocks the frame from the chassis. So to open this up, it's actually quite easy. Either just use your nails or a butter knife or a flathead screwdriver and pop these two parts, these two covers away from each other, like this. There's a little spring here, and if somebody has opened this up before or it's accidentally opened, you just want to check that the spring is still there. Sometimes that is actually the cause for this mechanism not working. Otherwise, if you look at these two pieces, you'll see that the one on the back has this angled plastic part, and what happens is this slots in on the back side of the frame here, and it's angled outwards so that when that strut presses, it presses down and then it finds a hole on the inside of the strut and pushes in. So you want to examine this piece if you're having the problem where it doesn't lock onto the chassis, and make sure that the plastic here hasn't become damaged and parts of this plastic are perhaps kind of scrunched out, in which case you can just sand it down into its correct form again. You can always look at the other side to see what it should look like. And then doing that should solve the problem if the problem lies in that part of the mechanism. Okay, the second major function then of the frame is the seat positions. So when the frame is off, it's locked in at a point where you can just swivel it like this, so you can pack it away for easy storage. But of course, once you put this frame onto the chassis, the button pops out, and then you have various points. Now, if you're having trouble adjusting the seat to various heights, meaning that the button does not pop back out, then you can open up this mechanism, and I'm going to show you how to fix it. So flip the frame on its back, and you'll see a screw here, just with a regular Phillips screwdriver type. You just want to open that up. There's a screw, and there's 2 washers as well, so don't lose any of those parts. This allows you then to actually pull out the entire button assembly, and then you have these 2 parts here. Okay, so we're going to look at the button assembly. In order to take off the white button, you'll notice that there are these white pegs. There's 3 of them that pop out of these little slits. You just want to use a flathead screwdriver, pop it in. There we go. And these parts very often just pop apart from each other. So I'm going to show you how to reassemble this afterwards, because we've had several questions on that, how to reassemble these pieces if you've taken it apart. But first I'm going to look at this button. So if this button isn't popping out, if you put it into this ring, you might notice that it's tight against that ring. And what can happen is over time with weight, the weight of your child in the frame and so on, the ring itself will deform and will no longer be circular so that the button fits inside. In order to fix this, the easiest way is to sand down the outside of this ring a bit while testing with this piece to make sure that it can fit comfortably inside that ring. For this, I use a Dremel. So just get a Dremel with a head that you can fit along the edge of that rim. So the idea of what I'm doing is to go back and forth in smooth, continuous motions in order to try to make that button smaller on all sides while retaining a certain smooth, circular feel to this button, so that it looks good. And then each time you've gone a few circles around, you can just test with this piece until it fits comfortably inside. At which point you might want to do a little bit more fine sanding in order to make that as smooth as possible. And in the end, I would recommend using a silicone spray. This is true with most elements of the Bugaboo models in general, actually. It's a lot of plastic. So if you're taking apart the mechanism, there's no need to use WD-40. You might as well use silicone spray because it's better and it protects the plastic. Yeah. And then you can reassemble this mechanism. Okay then, reassembly of this button. So you have the white button, and you have the 3 plastic pieces, and you have 2 springs. The larger spring has a smaller circumference on one side than it does on the other, so it's kind of cone-shaped. The smaller circumference element of the spring, that side, fits down onto the smallest plastic piece like this. The other spring is just straight, and it fits right around that central shaft. Okay, looking at this piece, one side of this has these gear teeth. That needs to go on the back. So if you're looking at the white button as the front of the mechanism, the gear teeth point towards the back. The spring setup inserts directly inside there. And what's going to happen is that these little teeth on this lip here, they are going to click on to the inside circle here. So if I take this and I press it in to press that spring, you'll see that those teeth came in and popped up over that lip. All right, if you look at the central shaft, it has these 2 plastic bits that kind of stick out on the side, these walls. And if you look at the center here, those are going to correspond in there. You're just going to click that in as well. And then the white teeth on here are going to slip in and click on inside these little slots here. Now, if you didn't put these walls the correct direction, these white teeth will not line up with those slots. Okay, I'm just gonna pop it all together then, like that. Okay, so now we're gonna put this assembly back in. A few notes on this ahead of time. There are gear teeth on the inside rims of both of these, and these will line up so that the space in between is the same, so that you can slot these gear teeth all the way in. Now, you're gonna look at the back of this, and you'll notice, I want you to notice two things. So one is that the gear teeth go further down, extend further down along the ring on one side. And the other is that these two parts that pop out, that stick out, that are angled, the most raised portion we can call the top of the button, and the part that's flush is the bottom. Now when I turn this around, the part that's the bottom has to be the bottom on the inside. And the side of this that has the gear teeth extending further down has to link up with the side of the gear teeth that extends lower down here. So here, the gear teeth extend lower down on this side than they do on this side, yeah? And it needs to be the same here, so that when you put it together, it all fits, right? If it's not the case, it means that this inner disc here, the smallest of those plastic pieces, is positioned in backwards. So just disassemble it and flip this around. Okay, I'm gonna slide this in then, so that all of those gear teeth link up. And then it all kind of snaps in together. Turn it on its side. And then of these two washers, the smaller lock type washer goes on first onto the screw, then the larger washer. And then you can screw it in. And you want to screw it firmly, but you don't want to overdo the tightness. That's generally the way it works anytime you have this like wood screw type screw, which means it's pointy at one end and it's meant to hold directly into the plastic, the way a screw would into wood. Then you want to make things firm. You don't want to overdo it because you damage the shaft. There we go. And now it's been reassembled. And you can just pop it right back onto your stroller. Okay, the last element of the frame that we sometimes have to fix has to do with drilling the larger pieces of the frame apart from the central mechanism. Reasons for this are either that the buckles, sometimes there's straps on the older Cameleon 2 models, and the buckles get damaged and you want to replace the whole buckle without doing it via sewing, in which case you need to drill out this rivet here. You can just roll back the foam in order to get at this rivet. And you just drill it out from the inside and replace it with a pop rivet or a pair of pop rivets afterwards. The other reason for having to drill out this rivet, in this case you would do this one and this one, is if you have to replace the entire foot. This sometimes happens because the ring where that button assembly inserts sometimes breaks, in which case you actually have to get a hold of another foot in order to replace that part. So this was our hopefully complete guide to fixing various problems related to the frame of the Bugaboo Cameleon. If you have any other problems that aren't covered in this video, we would love to hear what they are so that we can make a video covering them as well. Just leave a comment below. Otherwise, we hope that you found this video useful, and if you did, we ask you subscribe, as it helps us continue making videos in the future. Thank you.